Alright, so today's specialty item is what's called fry reglet, which if you try to use voice speech to text, it will never get that right for some reason. That is fry reglet, not reglet, not regret, not, I don't know, the voice to text tries to spell that any which way except for that. So don't bother with speech to text. Just saying. Anyway, you'll have to manually type that one out if you need to. But we have it here. This is just one example. This is just the Z type, which is just three-sided like so. And obviously it gets drywall float here. And then what he's gonna do is the painter is going to float from this bead. I have a slight lip on that, so he's gonna float this. And then it's gonna get a piece of wood. I don't have a piece of wood here to show, but I do have a piece of this from the miter saw. So a piece of wood is going to cover it like, basically like this. Let me flip it around because it's gonna cover it like that and create just a little pocket reveal like that. So that is gonna be the finish here. And then it's going to get wood up there without the reveal. And then down here, it's getting a 5/8 wood as well. That's going to sit in there like so, which I already have done over here. So it's going to be like that and give you that reveal. Now, what's interesting is their design shows this going to the floor, but obviously you have this here. And in order to do that, you have the drywall flange. So this was very tricky, but you know, sometimes we gotta do some specialty stuff here. Actually, let me do this and zoom. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do this instead. There we go. So you can see I just barely zip that off. In fact, that's actually why I have this piece here, is because it's very delicate work. You have to be very careful, make sure your blade is nice and sharp. And when I did that, I marked out what I needed here. Bent. If you cut, you can bend it on these marks here. So you can bend it off on that one that's super close. Set it there, and then just slowly set your blade right about there. And you're gonna have to hold your blade perfectly steady and slowly slide this like so to trim off. You might have to, like here, you can feed it like this right up until here, and sometimes it hits that. So if you hit that and you got to lift up, you're going to need to lift the blade, get that just barely on top, and then bring your blade back down. It's very meticulous, very slow, steady, very delicate work. And aluminum, if your blade's not sharp or you don't hold this really firm, it's gonna kick, and there goes your piece. Now you're gonna have to cut it and start over again. If you have enough. If you don't have enough, you're gonna have to order more, and that sucks. So really gotta brace. That's why you can't freehand it. You need to have something you can really brace and hold this very firm while that blade's going. Also, where's my wax stick? I did say wax, not whack. I do have a wax stick. It's called a couple different wax sticks, hammers. This is something to use when you're cutting aluminum, be it aluminum door frames or this fry reglet or anything else aluminum. You can get these at Harbor Freight for like $3 for a pack of 12 or something, but that's wax inside. And what you'll do, start your blade spinning, and you can just run this down slowly, and it'll coat that blade in wax, and then cut off the extra plastic as you pass the teeth. Cut off the plastic coating around the outside. And what that does is keeps your blade from burning the edges of that or catching and possibly, you know, flicking your piece. And it just keeps your blade better, longer, and keeps your cuts cleaner. So, you know, $3 saves you a very expensive blade and possibly trim pieces, especially doors. You do not want that to happen. But anyways, so we got that side done, and we got this side done. We got that vertical corner. I'm working on this currently, and then here, and finally this corner. I'll do this corner first and here. But there is different types of reglet. Like I said, this is just a Z type. Downstairs on level 3, we had a F type, which is like this, but then it also comes back like this. It has a return here. So, and then something would butt against it like that. But we did that at the ceiling, and then what we had to do was use a piece of L bead to create basically a fry reglet right near the edge of a ceiling joint. It was really weird and dumb, honestly, but we had to pull something out of our asses to make that work. And then here, you see, they corner beaded this beforehand, but they ran it a little long, not quite far enough, because this wasn't, the drywall wasn't trimmed back just far enough for this. So when the painter does this, he'll have to float in there a little bit and paint that. Same with the other 3 corners. And now, something else we can do real quick is talk about paying attention to your finishes beforehand. You really gotta, when you're doing this and they don't have the floor floated and it's as bad as it is here, and I mean bad. I'll get to that in a second. But here, well, actually this is a perfect example. This is not level at all. It's straight, it's not level. This piece right here from my level ceiling, 105 1/4. This side from my level ceiling, 103 7/8. That is a whole 1 3/8 difference from here to here. That is so bad. So obviously I could not just make this level because they're not gonna float the floor that much. They just won't. That's so expensive and time consuming. There's just no way they will. Now here's not so bad. From that crack to over here is only about, what was it, 1/2 inch difference? Yeah, 1/2 inch difference. So we can actually have them drop right here. That drops about 1/4. So if they floated 1/8, that 1/4 inch works with the window. I'm digressing here. But anyways, just going with the reglet. Where's the reglet? If you notice, I have this piece of carpet here. It's old carpet, but the new carpet's pretty much the same thickness. You notice that slides right underneath. Perfect. So when they go carpet it, they can slide this underneath and not have any weird cuts right there. And then that way the carpet easily fills the inside of that little channel that gets created. And then this is really smart to come up with. Even if you don't have carpet, if you know you're gonna have carpet, you can get like a 1/4 inch plywood or 1/4 inch plastic shim, something. And they're gonna have a 4 inch wood base, and then this is a 5/8 reglet. So right here, I'm gonna have to trim that just a little bit right there. Got 4 1/2, almost 5/8. But they might also just need to scribe that a little bit because the floor does change. But you can check that there and over there and just snap your line across, and then your reglet will be nice and straight, and they can scribe the wood base to the floor as required. And then same thing out here. And then here I had to pay attention again because I know the floor is ultra bad in here. So I had to check for this window right here. Well, door with the side lights. And I checked way ahead of time because I had for other things in this room. And luckily, they only need to float it 1/8 here. So they can feather that out to nothing here. So luckily, I did not actually have to do anything but the single piece of carpet there. But that is something you really need to look ahead on when doing stuff that meets the floor. Is, oh, sorry, I'm tired. You need to anticipate your flooring so that it doesn't end up too low and then you're ripping it out later and it's a huge mess and a giant back charge from the painter. which would suck, and possibly other people. But real quick, I'll show you just how bad this floor is. So from this door, just across this hallway, this drops a whole inch. I mean, it's nuts. And then here you got 3/8, 5/8, 3/4, down a whole nother inch. So they are down a whole inch here, and from there to there, another inch. So from that door to here, that's only about 16 feet. That is sunken in 2 inches. And you know they are not gonna float this floor 2 inches. No way, no how. So what they are gonna have to do though is they are gonna have to float it out in here, because they do have cabinetry going here that wraps around. And then obviously we have the upper cabinets going there. And then this is exactly the ceiling height. So I have to keep that where it is, and then that's 7 foot there, so that's not as important. But they're gonna have tile on the wall here, obviously by the tile baggers, so we had to anticipate before they put those in. Well, they had to raise those up. And then this also gets a tile floor, so that's gonna be about a 1/2 inch thick, not a 1/4 inch like carpet. So I actually had to raise this a 1/2 inch here for my door header height. I'm sorry, I'm ADHD as fuck, I'm sorry. I'm just getting way off track. This was all about reglets, and here I am talking about floor float and shit. But anyways, that floor float definitely, I'm gonna have to cut that a little bit, that might be holding me out. So yeah, back on the topic. The floor float will matter when you're doing things like this, where you meet the floor with it. If it's up in the air, that's going to be less important, unless you have like, unless you have like tile with a certain number of joints or something that you're going to have to meet, or a specific height of something that's going to sit on the floor that the reglet is supposed to meet. Like, again, you're going to have to pay really close attention to that, to those finishes. But in this case, it's just the flooring itself. So as long as I check what kind of float they're gonna have, if any, and figure that out. Here, like I said, this was a 1/2 inch difference, but we're able to drop it 1/8 right here, and they'll float it 1/8, drop it another 1/8, they have to float it 1/4, and then it drops 1/8 more here, so they're gonna float it 1/4 again, so it's gonna drop 1/8 per, and then this will be level. And there's going to be no float here, so I was able to just slip the carpet right there and use that. So just carpet, carpet, carpet. So I kind of lucked out more or less with that once I figured this doorway out, what kind of float they're going to have to do here. And then this, we're just living with it. So just pay very close attention to your other finishes, not just your own, when doing trims that extend to the floor or have something between the floor and them. That's the main thing I wanted to mention regarding this. Oh, and even when you're doing your sheetrock, before you even start this, pay attention to your details. This is how I drew this up. 2 layers of sheetrock like this, and then 2 layers of sheetrock like that. So that's not normally how a corner, usually this would extend all the way to here. But in this case, this is where my fry is going. So then this wood comes over like so. Actually, that's showing like this, and that piece is not there. So he's gonna have to paint the back side of his wood right there. But we're gonna have that. So there's your wood and your drywall. You have to figure that out beforehand, so you don't have to go back and cut it later. Like the guys did not pay attention here, and we had to do that. And they even actually extended this piece beyond. So they extended this all the way to here. So we had to cut this back, and then it was, no, actually that would have been better. They extended this piece all the way. They forgot to do that. So when we cut it back here, this piece was not where we needed it. And this was just too low. What? No, what did they do again? Oh, okay, so they flip-flopped this. What my guys did was they actually ran both pieces right here, and then ran this piece out to here, but it was not perfect. It was like, you know, a piece of drywall or cut a little short. Well, that doesn't work because that's where my trim gets screwed in. So what I did was I borrowed some of the painter's 20-minute, mixed it up, and floated that flat after getting this cut back enough, and then cut a piece of tape here, and once the 20-minute was plenty dry, I taped this on there. I'm gonna let that set up overnight because we're pretty much at the end of the day here, and tomorrow that'll be plenty dry, and then I can screw that in with laminator screws and we will be just fine. Alright, this video has gone on long enough. I apologize. Who the fuck keeps writing on my wall with Sharpies? God damn it. I keep telling these guys, dude. Side note, number 5 for this video, or whatever it is. Don't write with Sharpies on finished walls. It will bleed through the mud and the painter will hate you. Don't do that. Only write in Sharpie if it's getting demoed.